Hello, Bolts family. I come to you today with a heavy heart because yesterday we lost the greatest Charger fan of all times, my father, Chuck Pinson, Charlie Pinson, Dad, Grandpa, whatever you want to call him. Just don't call him late for dinner. My dad was a great Charger fan. I remember, well, so he became a Charger fan when the Chargers moved to San Diego. I think it was 1961. He used to go to Balboa to watch them. They used to practice in Escondido, which is a not well, it's a big town now, but it used to be a small town. They used to practice in Escondido, and he told me one time that there's this Mexican restaurant. What's the name of it? There's a Mexican restaurant over there by the lake, and he was drinking beer in there with Louis Kelcher back in the day. My dad goes way back with the Chargers, and he was a huge fan. He was a huge fan. I think the Chargers was probably his greatest love of everything outside of his family. Man, I just remember going to Charger games with him. And in 1967, he took me to my first Charger game. 1967, down there in they used to call it Jack Murphy Stadium back before. I think before it was called Qualcomm, it was called Jack Murphy Stadium. And I just remember it was against the Raiders. And in those days, in that era of Chargers, so in 1963, the Chargers were the world champions. Why do I say that? Well, I keep threatening to do a video on it, but I don't know if I will. But in 1963, the Chargers won the AFL championship, and they won it big. It was like 53-10, and they had two running backs that ran for over 200 yards, and they had John Hadel, and they had Lance Alworth. I think was a rookie, and they were so good that they actually, I think Chicago, if I'm not mistaken, the Chicago Bears were the NFL champions that year, and they said, well, we're good enough, we can beat Chicago. So the owner of the Chargers was Baron Hilton, the owner of the Hilton Hotels. Yeah, that guy. He was the founder of the Chargers, the original owner. He put an ad in the Chicago paper, and he says, we will challenge the Chicago Bears. This was after they won the NFL championship, to a world championship, and we'll play anywhere, anytime, because we're better than you guys. And then they didn't. Well, we can't play those. That's just American football. They're no good. They're just children. That would be disgraceful to play. They were scared. I guarantee you, they were scared. Why do you refuse a challenge? Because you're scared. That's why. So the Chargers printed in the newspapers all over the country. Once again, Hilton ran this huge full page ad. The 1963 Chargers are the world champions, and they have rings. Gosh, maybe I'll find a picture of a ring because I have pictures on my computer. You can look it up. They have rings that say 1963 World Champions Chargers. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. And yeah, it counts. So, well, that doesn't count before the civil. Shut up. Well, that was before my time. Who cares? Lots of things were before. World War II was before your time. It doesn't count. Don't be stupid, okay? Pull your head out and don't be stupid. It counts. Anyway, so 1967, he takes me to my first. And in those days, we still had John Hadel. I think we still had Lance Allworth, Dickie Post, a guy named Gary Garrison. Um, what was the guy's name that played the DB? Speedy Duncan. His name was Leslie Duncan, and they called him Speedy Duncan. He had a 199-yard touchdown return. I think got a punt or a kickoff, and he was my hero. I wanted to be Speedy Duncan when I was a kid because I was so slow. I wasn't speedy. Anyway, he took me to this Charger game, and I'll never forget. I don't remember who went with us. It was a neighbor and his kids. It's a friend of my dad's. So we went to this Charger game, and I'll never forget that because back in those days, like I say, the Chargers, they weren't very good. They were like third place. They were always like an average team. They might have a winning season. They might not have a winning season. They never were in first place. It was always the Raiders and the Chiefs. And the Broncos were always like the Broncos were the worst team in football for a long time. I remember they had a black guy who was a quarterback. His name was Merlin Briscoe. They called him Merlin the Magician. Why? Because they had no O line, and all he ever did was run around back there trying to throw the football. He was pretty good, but they weren't very good. And so anyway, I remember this game, and I remember the Raiders used to be the dirtiest team in football. They still get a lot of penalties. I'm not sure if they get the most penalties. I think Denver actually gets the most penalties now. Denver's also pretty dirty. That just follows their coach, Sean, whatever his name is. He's a dirty coach. I used to like him, but now that he's with the Broncos, I don't like him anymore. Anyway, so they were really dirty. And nowadays, the Raiders are penalized a lot, but it's more for stupidity. Then they were dirty on purpose. And I remember them spearing guys. What does that mean? That means they tackle a guy, he's out of bounds or he's down, and they jump on him with the helmet. into the body to try to get him out of the game. That's the kind of team they were. And I remember people started saying Oakland sucks. So I remember that was the thing we used to say, Oakland sucks, right? The Raiders suck or something like that. That was a saying we had. I remember this guy named Ted Leitner when he came to town, and Ted Leitner would say, "Why do you say Oakland sucks? You know they're a pretty good team." Doesn't understand. It doesn't mean they're not good. It means we hate them. Out of all the and once again, I'm a Christian, so I don't hate anyone. I love everyone. But in football world, it's different. Football world is like, rip their head off. We don't really literally mean rip their head off, but it's football, right? And I remember one time, Dad and I think it was Dad and Gay, his wife, and I know me. I was there. I don't remember who else was there, but I think me and my brother, my first wife, and his girlfriend, and somebody else was there. Some other people were there, and I had these shirts made up. So I had these shirts read that said, I think they said Raiders suck, and they had a picture of a football guy like this, and we dyed them yellow because they were just white T-shirts, and we wore them to this game, and that's like this huge, and we won that game. So that's like this huge memory that I have. I have other memories that aren't quite as nice of winning, but my father, and he had this thing in his room. So when he lived up, he lived in Northern California in a really nice mobile home, modular home, and he had this room outside, and he has all this Charger stuff. It looks like an idol, and he always had all this Charger stuff up, and he always wore the Charger clothes. And I remember last time we took him out to breakfast, my wife and I, my current wife. And I think it was after we went to the Philippines. I'm not sure. We took him out to breakfast at his favorite place, Mama Cat's in San Marcos. And I remember it was game day. And Dad was like, "How come we're the only ones wearing Charger stuff? Don't they know it's game day?" It's like, Dad, they don't care about the Chargers. Nobody cares. My dad loved the Chargers. It's kind of sad that he died on game day and he didn't get to see him win. But I'm pretty sure he gets to see him now. And I'm pretty sure he knows what's really important now because my father, I'm sorry, guys, I know that this is about football, and I know that some of you aren't believers, but my dad accepted the Lord a couple years before he died. We had a private time. I'm not going to get into details on that. I'll talk about that somewhere else. But I know that he's happy now. He's not in pain anymore. He's not suffering. It would be ironic for the Chargers. I think next year, because of our O line situation, I think next year is a Super Bowl year. But it will be ironic that it's like the guy. What was his name? The guy Roy Rogers, the guy that owned who's the guy that owned the Dodgers? Roy Rogers, I think. Anyway, he died, and then 2 years later they won the World Series, something like that. No, might have been the Angels. I think it was the Angels. But anyway, that would just be the way of it, right? But hopefully you can still watch football in heaven, huh? So for my father, and he's the one that taught me this too. Ready? Da 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 da! Charge! God bless you guys. Ta ta for now.